Hey, what's up? Well, I'm back to make another video. Might have to schedule this one for a future date. Because I'm just, I've had so much, well, not so much, but I'm going to have several things come out within a short period of time for the simple reason that they kind of tie together. And in this video, I only want to go into one thing that that I wanted to share. And I've already read aloud a poem that I wrote about being sick with a cold in 97, so that even if I ever get to a stage in my life where I forget things more easily, I still won't forget that. And I think I've already read it before. But I wanted to read what the AI bot had to say about it. And yeah, I basically copied and pasted the poem about me being absent in May of 97.
Was absent May 97. It certainly wasn't heaven. Sick with a cold, almost 14 years old. It wasn't my first, but my pride it did burst. I was in grade 7. It sure was not heaven. Life was at its worst. This cold wasn't my first. I'd had more in grade 6 that I couldn't fix. And I would in grade 8. They sometimes made me late. My teens were not great, and my life I did hate. Was absent May 97. It certainly wasn't heaven. It wasn't my first, but my pride it was burst.
And I pasted it. And the response, I asked, what the AI bot thought of it. And the response was this: I think your poem is a powerful and relatable expression of a difficult time in your life. You've captured the feelings of frustration, disappointment, and even despair that can come with being sick, especially during adolescence, especially when you think you're a superhero. The repetition of the phrase, "it certainly wasn't heaven," drives home the idea that this experience was far from ideal. Well, I did that because there's probably a lot of people that just thought I missed school because I wanted a 3-day weekend. I appreciate how you've woven together specific details like the month and year, your age, and the grade you are in to create a sense of intimacy and vulnerability. The use of rhyme and rhythm adds a musical quality to the poem, making it more engaging and memorable. Your poem also touches on the theme of struggling with one's teenage years, which is a common experience for many people. You've expressed the emotional turmoil and self-doubt that can come with that stage of life in a way that is both personal and relatable. Overall, I think your poem is a great example of how writing can be a therapeutic outlet for processing difficult emotions and experiences. Well done. Well, basically, I just wanted to, talk in this video before I post my next one about the reasons why being an adolescent is so difficult. And I've cut up some pieces of a strawberry box. I don't know what it is about men, but they like destroying things. They enjoy being destructive. They'll shoot cans in the backyard just for fun. They like to burn things. And they like destroying things unless it's an empty container that needs to be thrown in the trash. Then it becomes indestructible in their minds. And they just can't quite figure out how to tear it apart if it's a box of popsicles, an empty box, or how to cut it up if it's a plastic container of strawberries, or otherwise disassemble it so that it can neatly fit into the trash. Whereas I have fun doing it. I take out my anger on stuff like that. I enjoy tearing apart boxes. You just tear them open the same way that they're glued together. And it's very simple. You know, it's as easy as just opening up the box to begin with. You just open it in the other ways that it's held together. Basically, I might demonstrate on here one day. But it's just so frustrating because my dad has always acted like his empty boxes of this, that, and the other are indestructible, you know, and must be left on top of the trash can, you know, like they can't come apart. And it's infuriating because you just don't have to. Well, he's got this idea that you have to bring them to the dumpster separately, like, you know what I'm saying? Like they're indestructible, like they can't come apart. And it's just amazing, you know, to me how the same gender that can build things and put things together, you know, if it's an empty container, they just can't seem to tear it apart. But I have fun doing it, you know, no matter what it is. I have found that, you know, whether it's a container of pop, you know, just tearing it apart. And then if you want to, you can even wet the cardboard on purpose and soften it up so that it folds neatly into the trash bag. And, you know, it's not even the same container anymore. So anyway, I cut apart this strawberry box, this little container of strawberries, and I wanted to use them in a demonstration or an explanation as to why adolescence is so hard. Such a hard part, a hard stage of the lifespan, especially for girls. Well, I'm using orange. I'd rather use yellow, but you'd never see it. If I did, you know, it wouldn't show up. So on this piece of plastic, you have the problems, and it doesn't matter if I write neat. You have the problems of childhood. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's messy. Okay, so here's the problems of childhood, the issues that children typically have. You know, maybe not babies, but, you know, just children in general. Children who haven't hit puberty. You know, and as much as people are in denial of this, especially the makers of children's cartoons, there are a lot of problems that are all but specific to childhood, you know, medical issues. That's why you have pediatricians and regular doctors. Okay, they're not one and the same, although you can go to a regular doctor as a child. So children have, you know, certain issues that they're more likely to have than older people. And the common cold is one of them. It's a lot more frequent, as I've talked about before, in childhood. Okay, things like, you know, just secondary infections. You know, they have a lot of injuries, you know, not that adults don't anymore, but things like that, you know, stuff just happens to them all day long, you know, because they're just learning how to navigate the world and they're being exposed to new germs all the time. So there's problems of childhood. Okay. And then let's pick another flat surface. These are all wet, some of them, so I'll just rub them on my pants. Then, when you get to be a teenager, you go through puberty, and I'm using blue to represent that. Okay? And so you have brand new problems. Brand new problems are introduced to your life. You know, you can start, you know, if you're a girl, you start having periods, and depression, and in my case, you know, the harder part of puberty was actually breast development before I ever got my period. You know, to me that was more distressing because it's harder to hide. And by now it's 2 triple D cups worth of stuff to hide, and I can't, you know, unless I wear a binder that will crush my rib cage, basically. Okay, so you go through puberty. Now you have adolescent problems, which this isn't writing very well, so I guess the blue isn't going to work out. See, that's why I didn't use yellow. So I'll just use the red one that I was going to use for another purpose. Okay? So here's adolescent problems, and I'll just use red for menstrual period. Okay? But, see, here's the problem. So here's why adolescence is so hard. Because, you know, just because you have these new problems associated with puberty, Can you see through that? There are two different colors. So on this is written childhood problems. On this, imagine it says adolescent problems, and I just scribbled because I'm going to throw these away. So here are the problems that you have as a child, like frequent colds, ear infections, and this is the part that people don't want to acknowledge as to why adolescence is so hard, and especially for girls, because they're still so close to childhood when they start to go through puberty. They're still so young. And so adolescent problems come in, but the childhood problems haven't necessarily disappeared, okay? And so you have basically childhood and adolescence, or young adulthood, the problems that you start having, say from puberty on into your 20s. You have those problems still. And so, and that's what I'm saying, people are in denial of it, but, kids don't just miraculously stop having the health problems associated with younger children, the minute they hit a certain grade level, like fifth grade or junior high. If anything, in junior high, in my case, I had more colds in sixth grade than in fifth grade just because of the stress and the higher number of kids. So going to junior high only decreased my annual cold rate by one cold, the following year. And then in eighth grade, I had twice as many colds as I'd had in seventh grade, because my little sister entered she entered elementary school while I was still in junior high. She entered kindergarten. So I never had fewer than 4 colds a year until I was a senior in high school. And by that point, I was 18, and then I got to college and they no longer take attendance. Well, they might take it, but you don't get an award for going to class. So you still have an overlap. Had to pick that up. So you still have an overlap. You have childhood problems, especially with me being so young when I entered puberty, and then having a younger sister, and the childhood problems that are, contagious disease can be extended well into adolescence by having a younger sibling to reintroduce you to those elementary germs. Because there was only 2 years in between. Like, my sister and I are 9 years apart, but with me being redshirted, I went to school a year late, so we're only 8 years apart in school. So there were only 2 years in between my 6th and 7th grade year. And 6th grade is more like elementary anyway. Yeah, there were only 2 years when neither one of us was in elementary school. And so that would be my 6th and 7th grade year. And as I've stated before, 6th grade is just a bigger elementary school in some ways. They do the same things, only they're in junior high. And so, by the time I got to 8th grade, I had a little sister in kindergarten. And then I went to high school, and she was still in elementary school 1 through 4, another 4 years. And then I went to college, and she was still in the 5th grade. And then I had another 2 years of college where she was in, 3 more years of college. She was in junior high. And then her freshman year was that last year when I started out in the fall semester but didn't finish in college. And that was a bad year for her in colds because it was very stressful. And then, of course, that's why I'm saying my first year, my first age in my life without a cold was age 27. And guess what? That was the first year after she left home. She was 18. She went away to college, lived in a dorm. My dad was out of the picture, so it was just me and my mom as somewhat of an empty nester. So we were just 2 adult women living in a house with no children, no men. And that has a lot to do with why at age 27 I didn't get any colds. for the first time ever that I remember an age going by without any. So, your adolescent years are rough because it's like you still have, issues that begin in childhood, but then on top of that, you have puberty and all the things that happen in adolescence. Well, and these are also wet. The crossroads that I'm at right now, is also bad. And you see, I wish the blue would have worked, so that there'd be more difference in colors. But when you get to be older, like an old person, I'm going to use this to write old people problems, okay? And those are actually the worst health problems of the lifespan, because eventually they will result in death. So you have old people problems, and then you still have, problems from when you were younger at my age. And in my case, I'm actually entering midlife, though I hate to think of it that way. Or I'm just looking at my lifespan thinking it could be halfway over, thinking, what haven't I done? And what could I still experience, the same or better to make up for having not ever done it? Like the guy with the red sports car. What could still be left in the cards for me to do or experience that I haven't already, while I'm still young enough to enjoy it? Now, that's basically, what I'm going through right now. And, it's not very happy, but I guess it'll only get worse as my hair gets more gray. But the saddest thing of all is that looming in the background, although much smaller, much more distant, you can still have problems, dating all the way back to childhood, problems that you could have had, from all the way back to when you were a baby, such as the occasional cold I might still get as an adult. There's still a few respiratory viruses out there that, my body hasn't experienced, so I could still get a cold. Eventually I'll still get them at some point. And this part kind of ties into what I want my next video to be very soon after this one. That's why it just makes me very angry when you have these stupid cartoons that are in denial, especially of these health problems, and to a lesser extent, well, they certainly don't talk about menstrual periods. And old people problems, well, they might talk in a joking way, but it's just so frustrating, to turn on the TV and see no acknowledgement or evidence. That's why I don't like to watch TV, where everything is just like a cleaned up, more polished version of life. You might hear about some things, but not others. The ones that are less convenient in various ways. It's just very infuriating. It makes me never want to turn on the TV again. But when you have like shows where it's all about children, but yet they never have any colds, and you look back on your own life and just see how ridiculously unrealistic that is. I mean, it's like, if you're going to be realistic about something in a cartoon or a show, if you're going to be gross in a realistic way, don't make better fart sounds. Don't have babies pooping on screen. Don't show full diapers where you can see the contours of the bulge, which is ridiculous, because nobody would save it up that long, really. Not even a grown man could save up that much for that long and then just suddenly release it in one big fart. Don't like they always have to have them vomiting, because it's more disgusting. Every contagious disease in a cartoon seems to have vomiting as a symptom, which in me is rare, thank God. But it's like, if you're going to be more realistic in a gross way, why not have kids with green snot running out of their nose, in elementary school or younger? Why not have real people with real hacking coughs, or even, just coughs that are a result of eating spicy food? Because I guarantee you, spicy food will make you sound like you have a cold, temporarily, like maybe one or two coughs that sound like you have a cold. until you clear it out. It's one of the many reasons why I avoid it. But, eating spicy food, you could have a voice actor, you know, just for one episode. I mean, they could eat something very spicy and then they could cough just a couple of times. I've always, suggested that from way back when I was a teenager. You could have the voice actors rather than actually get sick, just eat spicy food and just cough that phlegm just a few times and save those recordings, to pretend like the character is sick. You know what I'm saying? Like, to have a character, coughing throughout a show. You only need the voice actor to cough maybe a few times and then copy that sound. You know what I'm saying? They don't need to sneeze 500 times to make the character do it. They just have to sneeze maybe a few times. Like, you could spray some perfume and have the voice actor sneeze and just copy those sneezes. You know what I'm saying? So, it just really makes me mad when, like, you turn on the TV and it just doesn't reflect real life in the ways that you wish it would, but yet it does in the ways you wish it wouldn't. You know what I'm saying? The ways that are more divisive, as in only one gender, is allowed to have such bodily functions on screen. You know what I'm saying? So, it just really makes me mad. And so my next video should pertain to that. And I know this one's gotten kind of long, but I just wanted to say that, how adolescence is a bad time in your life because, you don't just suddenly stop having the problems of childhood, especially if you were relatively protected as a baby. That's kind of the perfect storm. It's when you're relatively protected, like a sweet little princess as a baby. And you're not allowed to go to daycare. You're not even allowed to have dance classes. You're not even allowed to go to church. Your parents don't even go to church because they don't want you put in a nursery with a bunch of sick kids. And so you have as minimal germ exposure as humanly possible your first 5 or 6 years of life, in my case. And then you're suddenly put in school so that in kindergarten you still have kind of a baby's immune system, so to speak. And, by the time you hit puberty, you're only in, what, 3rd or 4th grade or something, when I started having breast development. And then I got my period when I was almost 12. And so you're having to deal with, adolescent problems already because you're an early bloomer in being a girl. But yet your immune system was kind of a late bloomer in that you were not exposed to a lot of viruses when you were a little baby, and the only way my mom could have done it better would have been to homeschool me and extend that protection longer. And so here you are with an immune system that is several years behind in development, but yet your sexual maturation is a little bit ahead. So you're having a menstrual period, by the 6th grade, yet you're also being exposed to a lot of new cold viruses. And, same thing. Well, I had an average of maybe 6 or 7, almost 7 colds a year in junior high, with only 4 in 7th, as I've stated before. And then high school, it was 4 or 5 per year. So it's like you're a young woman and you're getting colds all the time, like a younger child. And so, you lose your voice. I would always get laryngitis or hoarseness with it most of the time. And so it's like you have problems, the younger child could be having, but then you also have adolescent female problems. And so I guess the better scenario, which I don't even like to think that this exists or happens, would be like if you were a late maturing boy who took everything in stride. You don't really care about school. You don't stress about anything. You just have a laid back personality. And so when you're little, you're put in daycare or don't care. And you are around lots of other kids, especially other boys. And you're even in sports and, you're exposed to pretty much everything you can be as a younger child and you have a continuously runny nose, like those kids my mom used to make fun of all the time. Like some of our cousins, boy cousins, and you got earaches and all kinds of infections when you're little. You're always at the doctor. But then your immune system, by the time you're in kindergarten, is more like a fifth grader. So that you suddenly start having the number of colds more like the older kids are getting when you stop going to daycare. And your body doesn't really hit puberty until junior high, and then it's male puberty, so it's not as hard on you. It's more subtle and gradual, because the testosterone, increases much more gradually. So, you don't really, you don't have a lot of stress compared to, say, some kids, and you don't have a menstrual period. And so they might actually, it's like, the girls that were getting fewer colds than them when they were little are now getting more colds than them in junior high and high school. And especially, like, let's say as a boy, you're the baby of the family. So you were even exposed to your older siblings' germs when you were little. And so now that they're adults, by the time you get to be a teenager, they're not giving anything to you anymore. And so that really makes me mad, to think that there could exist some kids who got through years of high school without any colds. I don't even like to think that that could happen. That there could be some teen boys, that may have had a grade in high school where they didn't have a cold. And, I like to think that if, they say that they probably just forgot that they had one. You know what I'm saying? Because I know that I was getting 4 or 5 per year in high school, and that was probably the lowest cold rate I had had since entering school. Then college would even be lower than that, at 2 to 3. And now that I've graduated college, it's 1 or less. So yeah, just wanted to talk about that again. And how, that's why adolescence is hard. And it's also why I just hate cartoons that seem to omit the common cold from their universe.